All right. Well, welcome everyone. Welcome to a cold Thursday night, at least in the Toronto area, Canada area, and it's super great to be here again, and happy to be your MC, as it were, and very happy to be introducing you to Christine. And Christine, I was wondering if it's Muller in terms of the Swiss pronunciation, or Muller, or how do we actually pronounce it?
It doesn't really matter. I think we call it ourselves Mueller.
Mueller,
I,
okay.
I don't know.
That's good. You're detached. I love it. So thank you for joining us. And as we know, this is one of these topics that is universal in nature. And the Baha says that all universal problems, challenges, have a spiritual sort of dimension to it. And I loved when I was looking at just the small background we have about Christine, that she's very much interested in the science and the spirituality of this um, immense challenge that is before us. So, very briefly, her bio reads Christine studied music in Switzerland, but due to the urgency of the environmental crisis, she spent most of her life studying and teaching environmental issues. She's created the study course called Scientific and Spiritual Dimensions of Climate Change, which is available on the website of the International Environmental Forum. She teaches a climate change course for the Baha'i Institute of Higher Education, BIHE, in Iran, and she serves as the secretary of Baha'i-inspired International Environment Forum. You'll notice in the invitation that came out to you that there's links to all of those, and I would really encourage you to click on them. I did some brief background research leading into this, and it's really quite amazing when you look at the depth of this topic and how much she and others have contributed to its evolution from a spiritual perspective as well as from a scientific perspective. So very, very happy to be welcoming you to this talk, and looking forward to hearing from Christine. And for those, if this is your first time, we'll just open it up to Christine to share some ideas and thoughts, and then we love to leave some room to have some questions and comments and open dialogue. So with that said, Christine, I'll pass it over to you.
Well, thank you very much, Brett, for your very kind introduction. And thank you, everyone, for coming today. And I'll try to share my screen. Can you see this?
Perfect.
That is wonderful. Right, I think that should work. So, I'm really glad to talk about this topic because it has been dear to my heart for a really long time. So let me start with my personal journey. I grew up in Switzerland, a very small country in the heart of Europe, and witnessed an enormous building boom during a period of economic growth after the Second World War. I saw how agricultural fields were disappearing for more houses, stores, and industry. Here you see Rheinach, the village we moved to in 1963. The photo is from 1949. So when we moved there, there were already many more houses than you can see here, but there were still orchards and agricultural fields. Here you can see two pictures of the city today. Almost all agricultural lands are gone. So already as a youth, I was thinking about what might happen to the Earth if this human industrial expansion happens on a global scale. Today, humanity uses the equivalent of about 1.7 planets to provide the resources we use and to absorb our waste. This means that we are using natural resources faster than they can replenish. When I was young, my family spent a few weeks in the Swiss Alps every year. The glaciers were a consolation to me. I thought that at least the glaciers are safe from human destruction, so high up, beautiful and majestic. Unfortunately, I was wrong. In 1969, we were fortunate to ski down the Aletsch Glacier. You needed a mountain guide for that adventure, whom you can see second from the left. My sister and I are on the right. It was an incredible experience. The beauty and grandeur of the glacier in the sunshine is hard to describe. It was also the only place in Switzerland where I did not see any sign of human activity, no buildings or any other structures. Here you can see the Aletsch Glacier today, a bit further down. You see a lot of gray, bare rock instead of white ice and snow. The Aletsch is the largest glacier in the Alps. It took us about 6 hours to ski down. But the glacier has been shrinking at increasing rates. It now recedes at least 50 meters every year, sometimes more than 100 meters. It has also been losing volume. Here you can see the loss of volume just between 2010 and 2018. Glaciers all over the world have been melting at an accelerated rate, including at the poles. The ice is melting because of global warming. Last year, the Earth reached temperatures of 1.6 degrees Celsius warmer than at pre-industrial times. According to climate scientist James Hansen, the average global human-caused warming is now slightly below the famous threshold of 1.5 degrees, and it is questionable whether it will be possible to keep temperatures from rising above 2 degrees Celsius. And today, news broke that January 2025 was the hottest since record-taking, the hottest January, that is, with a 1.7 degrees Celsius global average. The Earth has been warming because of an increase of carbon in the atmosphere, which traps the sun's energy. On this slide, you can see carbon dioxide concentrations of the past 800,000 years until today. On the right, we can see the unprecedented rapid increase in carbon concentrations since the Industrial Revolution. Today's levels are extraordinary. Last time the atmospheric CO2 was that high was several million years ago, long before there were any humans. Human activities are responsible for this increase, especially by the burning of fossil fuels and deforestation. This warming of the Earth changes the climate. People all over the world are already suffering from the impacts of climate change. More severe heat waves, droughts, wildfires, storms, flooding, and sea level rise. Scientific projections for the future of the Earth's climate are dire. Then in 1981, we moved to the United States. I was very impressed about the large flocks of birds in Rhode Island, and I saw many hundreds of monarch butterflies on a field of goldenrod. Today, we see fewer flocks of birds, and when we do, they are much smaller. And monarch butterflies have become rare sightings. Perhaps I see 3 or 4 in one year. Humanity has destroyed about half of all plants and 82% of wild mammals. About 60% of all mammals on Earth are livestock, mostly cattle and pigs. 36% are humans, and only 4% are wild animals. Insects have been vanishing worldwide. Insects are essential for pollination and as a food source for birds, amphibians, and mammals. The, the diminishment, diminishment and extinction of plants and animal species are happening at an extremely fast rate. Each extinct species is a loss for humanity. We will not be able to use these species for the development of new crops or for the research of new medicines and treatments. Even more importantly, species extinctions create holes in the web of life, which disrupt the ecological balance and have far-reaching negative impacts on directly and indirectly connected species. Human life depends on healthy ecosystems for clean water, air, and food. Moreover, each plant and animal has intrinsic value that cannot be measured by a one-sided utilitarian approach. We are facing a triple planetary crisis. In addition to climate change and the loss of biodiversity, the scope of pollution of all kinds is mind-boggling. A survey of the chemical inventories of 19 countries and regions revealed that about 350,000 chemical substances have been registered for production and large-scale use over the past 30 to 40 years. Around the world, 1 million plastic bottles are purchased every minute, while up to 5 trillion plastic bags are used worldwide every year. Today, we produce about 400 million tons of plastic waste every year. 100,000 marine mammals and turtles and 1 million seabirds are killed by marine plastic pollution every year. And 1 in 3 fish caught for human consumption now contains plastic. And then there is nutrient pollution, primarily caused by agriculture through over-fertilization. Much nitrogen and phosphorus from fertilizers go into our rivers and oceans, causing excessive growth of algae. This causes eutrophication or dead zones, which kills fish and other aquatic animals. Air pollution is the largest cause of disease and premature death in the world. More than 7 million people die prematurely each year due to pollution. So, what can we do about all these threats to nature and human life? The good news is that we have sufficient scientific knowledge and the technology to live more environmentally sustainable and to restore some of what we have destroyed. The even better news is that most actions that address one environmental problem can contribute to improving the others as well. For example, restoring a forest with native trees helps wild plants and animals, as well as the climate. Reducing chemical fertilizers and toxic herbicides and pesticides in agriculture has a positive impact on human health, on biodiversity, on clean water, and on the climate. Electrifying the transportation system and strengthening public transportation is essential for reducing global warming and its harmful impacts on the climate, as well as reducing air pollution, which makes people sick. The bad news is that fundamental change is required in all economic areas. The energy system, the transportation system, the food system, the building sector, etc. The actions required are gigantic in scope and must happen from the international level down to the national, local, and individual level. and all sectors of society must be on board: government, business, and civil society. Such an enormous task is unprecedented, and I would say its scope is beyond comprehension. We could compare our situation with a train racing toward a precipice. We are all sitting in the train, debating its speed and direction, but it is still moving toward the precipice with high speed. There are now increasing numbers of people who believe that all hope is lost. This is understandable when looking at scientific projections for the future, at the worsening climate change impacts and the scope of environmental destruction, and at the inertia of humans to take action. Moreover, we can expect that increasingly severe climate change impacts will converge with other worsening social and environmental problems, which will result in a major crisis, possibly even in a collapse of human civilization. So let's take a step back and look at human history. Major transformations in human mindsets and cultures happened through the world's great religions. The Baha'i faith teaches that throughout human history, the creator of the universe has provided teachings that guide humans in their relationship with each other and with nature by sending prophets such as Abraham, Krishna, Buddha, Moses, Christ, and Mohammed. They all motivated individuals to grow spiritually and to live ethically, and they inspired new flourishing civilizations. Would we not expect further divine guidance for our age at a time when the very survival of humankind is at stake? Baha'is believe that God did indeed send us a new prophet, Baha'u'llah. Baha'u'llah was born in 1817 at the beginning of the Industrial Revolution. He lived in Iran until the government banished him from his native country. His long exile brought him to Baghdad, Istanbul, and, as a final destination, to the prison city of Akko in the Holy Land. At that time, all these places were still untouched by the industrialization going on in Europe. I became a Baha'i at age 17 because the Baha'i teachings provided me with the answer about the meaning of life. However, when studying environmental issues throughout my life, I became increasingly desperate and searched the Baha'i teachings for solutions. And to my great relief, I found what I think are the needed ethical framework, the practical guidance, and the spiritual motivation to address the environmental crisis. So, in the remaining time this evening, we will briefly discuss how some of these teachings can help humanity to address the environmental crisis. Of course, we will not have the time to discuss all the Baha'i teachings and how they relate to the environment, but you are welcome to bring up some others during our conversation. Let us first look at human relationship with nature. Stewardship of the earth is one of the teachings which you can find in all religions. Jewish scriptures say, when God created the first human beings, God led them around all the trees of the Garden of Eden and said, "See my works, how beautiful and praiseworthy they are. Think of this and do not corrupt or destroy my world." The Islamic Declaration of Climate Change summarizes the teachings of Mohammed and applies them to our age. God created the earth in perfect equilibrium. The present climate change catastrophe is a result of the human disruption of this balance. Baha'u'llah explained, nature is God's will and is its expression in and through the contingent world. If nature is God's creation, we should not destroy it. All human beings, plants and animals, are God's creation and will. A close related aspect is human interconnectedness with nature. In the past decades, we have acted based on the illusion that we humans are separate and independent from nature. Now we need to realize that we are part of the web of life and cannot control nature or each other through violence. We are all connected to each other and to all living beings. Most of our actions have a direct or indirect impact on other people, on plants, animals, and the climate. We have seriously degraded this web of life and and disrupted the balance in the Earth's natural system. The Baha'i teachings explain, reflect upon the inner realities of the universe. Every part of the universe is connected with every other part by ties that are very powerful and admit of no imbalance. Human actions are destroying this balance in nature with serious consequences, not only for plants and animals, but for human life. A deep insight into the interconnectedness of all life is fundamentally important when tackling environmental problems. This brings us to a new concept in religious history. The Baha'i faith teaches that we need to rely on both science and religion, and that these two must be in harmony. Science and religion are tools to investigate the reality from two different angles. Science asks, how does the universe work? Religion asks, why is there a universe? And what is its purpose? And what is our purpose of existence as human beings? How can we apply this to the environmental crisis, taking climate change as an example? Science can explain the causes of global warming and can project with various amounts of certainty the impacts of the resulting changes in the climate. Science and technology can also provide some technical solutions. Then, however, it is up to the public and to politicians to consider scientific facts, to apply values, and then to act accordingly. The values come from religion. Closely connected to this topic is truthfulness, which, according to the Baha'i teachings, is the foundation of all human virtues. So, why is truthfulness so significant when we talk about climate change? You're likely aware that some people have deliberately shed doubt on climate science, either driven by vested interests or by ideology. As intended, this has confused the public and has seriously delayed effective climate action. Truthfulness, reliance on science, and assessing the reality of our situation are the first steps to human progress. The next step is the application of values. Climate change is often perceived as just an environmental problem. However, it is very much a human problem, a social issue. The poor of the world are generally first and most severely affected by climate change, such as farmers in Africa or people in Bangladesh who are threatened by sea level rise. Or think of the people living on small islands that will have to leave their homes and lose their cultures because of sea level rise. In general, one can say that those most vulnerable to climate change are often least able to afford adaptation measures such as dikes, irrigation to compensate for droughts, or moving away from flood or storm-prone areas. Even in the developed countries are the poor first at risk from the impacts of climate change. Poor people are the most affected by rising food prices or by dislocation because of severe storms. Poverty alleviation is a central teaching in all religions. The Bible teaches, "Verily I say unto you, inasmuch as ye have done it unto one of the least of these my brethren, ye have done it unto me." And Baha'u'llah wrote, "O ye rich ones on earth, the poor in your midst are my trust. Guard ye my trust, and be not intent only on your own ease." In the Baha'i faith, there is an added dimension to that. Baha'u'llah calls not only for the eradication of poverty, but also of extreme wealth. Eliminating the extremes of wealth is important for climate change mitigation, because the rich people of the world are the ones who are responsible for most of the carbon pollution in our atmosphere. This graph shows the annual emissions of top emitters. You can see how China's emissions have grown tremendously in recent decades. However, this issue is quite complex. When we look at emissions per capita, the picture is quite different. You can see how much more CO2 the average American is emitting compared to other people. You can also see that emissions in the US and the European Union have been declining. However, this issue is even more complex. The mining of resources and the production of goods have increasingly been taking place in developing nations. On this slide, you can see the major flows from the areas of production to the countries of consumption. So while China's emissions have been growing rapidly, the consumption of the West is partly to blame for that increase. We also need to be aware that there is a small number of extremely rich people all over the world who are consuming much of the world's resources and cause more than their fair share of emissions. Here you can see the disparity of poverty and wealth illustrated. More than two-thirds of the world's people own together only 3% of the wealth. The top 8.5% of the world owns 83%. Wealth is a major cause of global warming because of the huge consumption of the rich. The Baha'i teachings contain provisions that would limit the accumulation of extreme wealth, but encourage individuals to acquire wealth to spend it for their own needs and for the common good. For example, they suggest very progressive taxes. Since poor people suffer first and the most from climate change impacts, and since the activities of the rich people are responsible for the warming of the earth, climate change is foremost an issue of justice. Another aspect of justice is the responsibility for reducing emissions. On this slide, you can see the historical CO2 emissions from different countries. These emissions raise the CO2 concentration in the atmosphere for a long time. Historically, the European Union and the United States certainly bear most responsibility. Therefore, this is also an issue of justice between developed and developing nations. By far the greatest justice issue is the fate of our children, grandchildren, and generations to come. What kind of a planet are we leaving to them? This is called intergenerational justice, justice between generations. Young people all over the world are beginning to understand how much their future is in danger because of climate change, and they are speaking out. It is imperative to uphold justice in all political and economic decisions. Baha'u'llah said, "No light can compare with the light of justice." The establishment of order in the world and the tranquility of the nations depend upon it. And the Baha'i writings further say, we ask God to endow human souls with justice, so that they may be fair and may strive to provide for the comfort of all, that each member of humanity may pass his life in the utmost comfort and welfare. It is very relevant to our topic that Baha'u'llah directly connects justice to moderation. Whoso cleaveth to justice can, under no circumstances, transgress the limits of moderation. The civilization, so often vaunted by the learned exponents of arts and sciences, will, if allowed to overleap the bounds of moderation, bring great evil upon men. If carried to excess, civilization will prove as prolific a source of evil as it had been of goodness when kept within the restraints of moderation. It is impossible to have perpetual economic growth in a finite biosphere. We need to learn to accept the limits of our planet. In the past, it was justified to consider a growing economy as desirable progress. And this still holds true for many poor people and countries of the world. However, for the rich countries and for the planet as a whole, we have reached the limits of growth. In fact, we have already far surpassed them. The current capitalistic economy exploits the earth and destroys its life support systems. It also exploits many people and exacerbates the extremes of wealth and poverty. The baseline for a sustainable economy should be the carrying capacity of the earth. In other words, we cannot continue to produce more and more stuff. However, many people are not connected to a higher purpose in life and therefore fill their inner emptiness with material things. This materialism results in excessive consumption. Millions of people try to find meaning in their lives by shopping and owning. One scholar even called consumerism the first global religion. However, several scientific studies indicate that once basic needs are met, human beings don't increase their life satisfaction or happiness by accumulating greater wealth. On a finite planet, it is no longer possible to satisfy everybody's wants. The goal should be to provide for the needs of all people and to improve the quality of life for everyone. Gandhi said, "The earth provides enough to satisfy every man's needs, but not every man's greed." That's why the teachings about moderation and the spiritual meaning of life can help us overcome our destructive addiction to stuff. The Universal House of Justice, the supreme institution of the Baha'i faith, wrote, "At all times, contentment and moderation, benevolence and fellow feeling, sacrifice and reliance on the Almighty are qualities that befit the God-fearing soul. The forces of materialism promote a quite contrary line of thinking, that happiness comes from constant acquisition, that the more one has, the better, that worry for the environment is for another day. Spirituality is the remedy for materialism and consumerism. A spiritual outlook can help us shift the emphasis from consumption to well-being and a meaningful life. The Baha'i writings say, man is in reality a spiritual being, and only when he lives in the spirit is he truly happy. Baha'u'llah calls us to live a life of contentment. Take from this world only to the measure of your needs, and forego that which exceedeth them. And in the next sentence, he connects contentment again with justice. Observe equity in all your judgment, and transgress not the bounds of justice, nor be of them that stray from its path. Justice, moderation, and contentment are not abstract concepts. They need to be applied in daily action. The Universal House of Justice wrote, every choice a Baha'i makes, as employer or as employee or employer, producer or consumer, borrower or lender, benefactor or beneficiary, leaves a trace, and the moral duty to lead a coherent life demands that one's economic decisions be in accordance with lofty ideals, that the purity of one's aims be matched by the purity of one's actions to fulfill those aims. Another important Baha'i teaching is trustworthiness. You may wonder about the relationship of trustworthiness and the environmental crisis. Actually, there is a lot. We can blame corruption for much environmental destruction. Illegal logging, for example, is a major cause of deforestation. Another example are companies that ignore environmental regulations just to increase their profit. In addition, illegal logging, poaching, and illegal unsustainable fishing also rob communities of natural resources and therefore undermine their sustainable socio-economic development. Trustworthiness is the antidote for corruption and is strongly emphasized by Baha'u'llah. Trustworthiness is the greatest portal leading onto the tranquility and security of the people. In truth, the stability of every affair has depended and does depend upon it. All the domains of power, of grandeur, and of wealth are illumined by its light. Trustworthiness is, in truth, the best of vestures for your temples and the most glorious crown for your heads. The central Baha'i teaching is the oneness of humankind, that all human beings are equal, that there is only one race, the human race, and that this is the age in which we must learn to live together like one global family. Several other teachings are connected to that overall theme. Most important is the abandonment of all prejudices. Recognition of this truth requires abandonment of prejudice, prejudice of every kind, race, class, color, creed, nation, sex, degree of material civilization, everything which enables people to consider themselves superior to others. You have probably heard of environmental racism. People of color are more likely to live in a neighborhood close to a coal-fired power plant, an industrial complex that releases toxic chemicals, a landfill, or even a hazardous waste facility. The air they breathe and the water they drink are more likely polluted than in a predominantly white suburb. Then, of course, people of color are also more often vulnerable to the impacts of climate change, such as heat waves, storms, and rising food prices. And on top of all that, the voice of people of color is often not represented in decision making because of discriminatory practices, including voting. The equality of men and women is another new teaching in religious history, and it is significant regarding climate change in many ways. First, we need to consider that women are disproportionately more affected by the impacts of climate change. They generally have less access to resources that could help them cope with a changing climate. And as caregivers, their lives are also severely impacted by increasing water scarcity and diseases like malaria that are spreading to new areas because of climate change. The empowerment of women is not only a human rights issue, but also a key element to fight poverty and environmental destruction. Experience has shown already that the participation of women in climate change mitigation and adaptation efforts is vital. Women have always been leaders in working for the health and well-being of their families and communities. The status of women also has a direct impact on population growth. Greenhouse gas emissions have only reached such a dangerous high level because of the large numbers of people living on our planet. Today, there are more than 8 billion people. Population growth is much smaller in countries where women have more rights. Family size is generally smaller when women are empowered to plan their family in terms of birth timing and spacing, and when they have the freedom to participate fully and equally in society. The principle of the oneness of humankind does not only uphold the equality of all human beings, it is also the ultimate goal to be realized. Baha'u'llah said, "Take pride not in love for yourselves, but in love for your fellow creatures. Glory not in love for your country, but in love for all mankind." The deep belief in the oneness of humankind is essential to effectively address the environmental crisis in two ways. The principle of the oneness of humankind helps us as individuals to understand that my everyday actions affect my brothers and sisters all around the world. This attitude will change the way we live and what we consume. Applying the principle of the oneness of mankind on the societal level is a prerequisite to address nationalism and is the foundation for global governance. And all of this is very important for effective climate action. The Universal House of Justice wrote, "The welfare of any segment of humanity is inextricably bound up with the welfare of the whole." Humanity's collective life suffers when any one group thinks of its own well-being in isolation from that of its neighbors, or pursues economic gain without regard for how the natural environment, which provides sustenance for all, is affected. Baha'u'llah said, "The well-being of mankind, its peace and security are unattainable unless and until its unity is firmly established." The Earth Charter clearly spells out the need for the unification of humankind. The choice is ours, form a global partnership to care for Earth and one another, or risk the destruction of ourselves and the diversity of life. As we can see from the outcome of a series of international climate conferences, our global human family is paralyzed by nationalistic and short-term self-interests. It is unlikely that the required major transformation of society can be achieved within the existing systems of political and economic thinking. We need to make a transition from thinking in terms of nation states to world citizenship. Baha'u'llah said, "The earth is but one country, and mankind its citizens." Embracing the concept of the oneness of humanity will change our perspective of climate mitigation efforts in many ways. Here, just one example. Some people and governments in developed countries have argued that the costs for mitigating global warming are too high for their economy. They ignore the fact that the first severely harmful effects of climate change are happening primarily in other countries. Such reasoning will stop when we regard the world as just one country and humankind as one family. We equally value the lives of people in other countries who may often be poor or of a different race. Moreover, the environmental crisis demands that all of humanity work together to implement solutions. The solution to climate change exceeds the capacities and resources of any one nation and requires the full cooperation of all nations, each according to their means. Pollution has no boundaries. Strong and enforceable laws need to be created to limit greenhouse gas emissions, not only on the local and national level, but also on the international level. There is a desperate need for global environmental governance. Baha'u'llah called for the establishment of a World Federation of Nations with its own legislative, judicial, and executive bodies. Such a world order is not only new in that it encompasses all of humankind, but also new in the underlying philosophy. The first priority is the well-being of everyone on the planet. National, regional, and local interests are respected, but are considered in the light of humankind being one family. This view is the opposite of nationalism, which has been the stumbling block to all international climate negotiations. This new world order is balanced. It also promotes decentralization and the empowerment of people at the grassroots. All people need to have a voice in the decisions that will affect their lives. Minorities and women must be especially empowered to take part in all plans for sustainable development. The knowledge and experience of indigenous peoples is essential in that process. Indigenous people all over the world have been at the forefront of calling for climate action and for protecting forests and water. Development projects have proven to be much more beneficial if the knowledge and experience of the local population are incorporated. The reason why current politics are not helping humanity advance is that politicians are usually driven by vested interests and ideologies. They are only concerned about their parties or their nation's interests. In addition, they have a very short time horizon, usually just to the next election. But our actions today will affect the climate for many hundreds, even thousands of years. Baha'i consultation is a spiritual method for decision making. Individuals participating in consultation have the common good in mind and are open to give up their personal points of view when others present facts or different perspectives that may be better. This requires the conquering of the ego and therefore spiritual development. But this is the only way to arrive at decisions that are really in the best interest of everyone. Moreover, this principle of consultation also includes that a majority decision is supported even by the minority who may have voted against it. And this assures unified and effective action. Already in 1981, the Universal House of Justice stated, until such time as the nations of the world understand and follow the admonitions of Baha'u'llah to wholeheartedly work together in looking after the best interests of all humankind and unite in the search for ways and means to meet the many environmental problems besetting our planet, little progress will be made towards their solution. Climate change requires enormous changes in almost all human activities, as well as some sacrifice by the rich people of the world. Such profound change requires a fundamental change in consciousness. Humanity's crying need calls for a fundamental change of consciousness, that the time has come when each human being on earth must learn to accept responsibility for the welfare of the entire human family. And right here we have the new destination for our train, a new direction for humankind. It's the welfare of the entire human family. Imagine a society where the well-being of all of humankind is the first priority in all decisions made by individuals, institutions, politicians, governments, and businesses. Perhaps we can summarize the Baha'i teachings with this quotation from Baha'u'llah: let your vision be world-embracing rather than confined to your own self. Focusing on the common good, on the well-being of everyone, is important for us as individuals to lead a meaningful life. And it is essential for humanity to address climate change and other critical environmental and social problems of our time. These were a few examples, just a few examples of how we can apply the Baha'i teachings to address the environmental crisis. Of course, Baha'is, together with our friends, are still very much in the process of learning how to express these teachings in our personal and community lives, and how to apply them to the ills of the world. We are still at the very beginning of spiritual transformation. Yet these teachings can provide an ethical framework and the motivation to work for harmony among ourselves and with nature. And most importantly, they provide a vision of a spiritual, just, and sustainable society worth working for. I thank you all for listening, and I look forward to hearing your views and comments.
Oh man, Christine, thank you so much. That was very comprehensive, very profound, sobering, exciting, daunting. So many thoughts going through my mind. I loved it. I love how you gave us sort of the scientific approach and then brought in so much of the Baha'i faith. And it's so amazing hearing the perspective that you have, because all of the quotes that you read in the Baha'i faith, obviously, like someone like myself, I've heard before, but just putting them all in that context gave it such, I don't know, power and meaning and so much to think about. So thank you. That was incredible. So friends, let's open it up. I'm sure there's lots of questions for Christine. And if you have a question, please raise your hand and like use the icon there to raise your hand. And if you don't want to actually speak out, you can also feel free to put your question in the chat and I can monitor that. So Yasmin, please go ahead.
Thank you very much, Christine. It was you classified it, and it was very nice. Uh, the story that comes to my mind, that yes, we have to personally be aware of how much I use, how much plastic, this, that, and that. But on the matter of housing people and getting them places to live, yes, there is one case that when someone has a big house, I don't know, 20 bedrooms and two people living there, that's not logical. But in general, uh, should the material used for these buildings be changed as well, or no?
Um, Certainly, I mean, the materials for buildings have a large environmental impact, especially concrete. The production of concrete produces a lot of greenhouse gas emissions. It's very significant. Like wooden structures are very, good. But of course, we also have to realize, supplies are limited. So we have to be really very careful at how we use our natural resources, and also with buildings. Uh, as humanity has grown, we have to accommodate many people on the planet. And we have to be careful with the land, that we have enough agricultural land left, enough land left for forests and prairies. And so we cannot just build over everything. So we do need to accommodate people on a smaller piece of land, which means like that they live together a little closer than they do now.
Well, of course, too much high rises doesn't work either.
Not too high, no. I think Abdul Baha did not like the high rises.
New
And
York, I'm
yes,
in a cave here, with those
yeah.
buildings. Yeah. Thank you,
Mm.
thank you. It was
Thank you
very
both.
uplifting. Thank you.
Kitty, please.
Yes, Christine, I don't even know how to thank you. Your talk really brought tears to my eyes. The way you
Oh,
connected, the way you connected the Baha'i writings to the current situation, it's so unique. I am going to use, with your permission, this presentation to many of the Baha'i, non-Baha'i friends I have. Now, I may be naive saying this, but in our little Baha'i communities, doesn't matter how many we are and where we are, wouldn't be nice that in every feast we just teach our young, our children, how in their own small ways they can take care of the environment, not using too much paper towels, not to use too much plastic. All of these little things works. And why not our Baha'i communities, small or large, be an example? We have to start from somewhere and just start something.
thank you, Giti. Yes, you're certainly right. We do need to connect our children to nature and to responsible actions and our youth. And it's a constant learning and teaching effort. I still learn every day about the environment. It never stops. And I've never done like gigantic changes in my lifestyle. They have happened in small steps throughout my whole life. And I still change things that I'm doing to be more environmentally responsible. It's never ending. It's a process.
Thank you. Beautiful.
Robert.
Thank you, Christine. Really enjoyed it. One comment and then one question, if I may. Comment is with regards to teachings and traditions of within the indigenous community, where rather than the notion of one of stewardship between human beings and nature, it's one of equality, and that the nature has much right as I do. And you can imagine that if that was something that was a belief within United States, then what could argue that the constitutional rights of the nature are violated on a daily basis?
Mhm.
So that really resonates with me, the concept of equality rather than, well, I mean, which is, I think, as more encompassing that than stewardship. The other thing is that Universal House of Justice in 2013 state that however promising the rise in collective consciousness may be, it should be seen as only the first step of a process that will take decades, nay, centuries to unfold. Now, based on that, I would like for you to please comment on the timeline as envisioned by the Baha'is in establishing or even recognition of the oneness of mankind, let alone its manifestation. These timelines versus the timeline of climate crisis. So if Baha'is are offering the Baha'i teachings as a solution, is it almost like it's not a viable solution because by the time they take place and they take hold of the society, I mean, there won't be a society, so to speak. Wonder unless something catastrophic on a world scale happens that would interrupt this timeline. Could you kindly comment on that?
Robert, you're speaking from my heart because I have been contemplating that for quite a while because that is a real problem. And I fully agree with your comments. The way I see it is that, all those who are Baha'is here this evening, you have heard the Universal House of Justice talk about, that there are two processes, a disintegrating process and then an integrating process. Now, fortunately, there are many good people in the world that are not Baha'is, and they are really working very hard for the common good. And they are also working for climate change consciousness and effective action, and they are fantastic. There are people that protest, and people who speak out for the truth. We need all of that. And Baha'is have a special task to build communities that are developing spiritually and learn how to express the Baha'i teachings in daily life, including environmental responsibility. and to build cohesion in the communities. And communities, I don't mean just Baha'i communities. I mean like the local community or the village or neighborhood, whatever. It's not exclusive. It's very inclusive process. And I think the longer I see how the earth and the whole society is going down, I think, yeah, that huge crises and catastrophes are now pretty much, a given. So building these communities everywhere in the world is a great hope. So when everything collapses, we can pick up the pieces and, survive as humans and continue with a human civilization. That's how I see it personally. But, we need really, it's not only the Baha'is. The Baha'is have this special task. But there are many others who work, some go into politics with good motivation. Some go into businesses. I'm not talking about Baha'is here, but there are many businesses. Well, in the business world, I can also see the Baha'is. There are many Baha'is as well in businesses, but people who want to have responsible businesses that are environmentally responsible. So there are many other good people, fortunately. But Baha'is, we do have a special task to really trying to apply these teachings to the environment.
Thank you, Christine. Yes, Sarah.
Yes, my husband Farid would like to say something.
Hi, my name is Farid, and thank you for the discussion. This is very interesting. And first thing I suggest, Christine, don't lose your accent. It's very good to know about it.
I won't, be assured.
I have my own accent. I speak 5 languages and all accent. But I like to bring up this issue of how we as individuals and community and institutions have to gear up for the change. And one example is how I think in Kenya, they built up houses that had a lot of plastics in it. Nigeria had some other things like that. And India is working a lot on the environmental issues, but it's not very popular. And you brought up Mahatma Gandhi's concept was very interesting. And also some parts of California. We live in Washington State in the United States, and some parts of California are using car tires threaded, and they use it as a pavement. And it lasts longer and has this. But the issue is a kind of whole of us have to work on it. Whether I'm a Baha'i or I'm a Muslim or I'm whatever it is, we have to work it out together. So I like to suggest a big thank you for what you are doing and what you're studying and what you're bringing up. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your comment.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Farid. It's moving over to Tim.
Yeah, thank you so much. It's always wonderful to hear you share the Baha'i teachings in light of addressing environmental issues. So thank you so much for that. And just again, it's a beautiful reminder that what we have in our hand, these teachings of Baha'u'llah, which are the perfect teachings for this age, and we're learning how to apply them. I'm just wondering if you could share a bit about how the friends can learn more about these issues, and maybe share a little bit about the International Environmental Forum as a resource and a place where building, working with like-minded people, as you're saying, to build a global, community working towards these issues, and how friends can learn more about these issues. And I don't know if there are any, if you're still doing courses at Wilmette Institute, friends, I don't know if that's continuing, but how can friends learn more about these issues and how to engage effectively with others at local level and be inspired by what's happening at the global level. But thank you so much.
Thank you, Tim, and thank you for your question. Yeah, the International Environment Forum is a hidden treasure, which I was lucky to find in 2006, and it's quite an amazing organization. It's a Baha'i-inspired organization. It's called inspired because it's not under the jurisdiction of the Baha'i administration. But we have received, or the International Environment Forum has received guidance from the World Center. So there is collaboration with Baha'i institutions, but it's the IEF is a Baha'i-inspired institution because it is independent of the Baha'i administration. And its mandate is basically to engage in public discourse on the international level on the environment. So like when there are conferences, the IEF produces a statement, or also the International Environment Forum is organizing conferences every year, and usually in connection with some other conference. It could be a UN conference, like on climate change, or sometimes also a Baha'i conference. So it's all about public discourse. But in addition to that, the IEF also tries to create and gather materials for its members and for Baha'is everywhere. You don't have to be a member, and you don't have to be a Baha'i, for anyone in the world to use these materials in social action on the local level. So there are different things, the IEF website is huge. So you find a lot of things. You find quotations from the Baha'i writings. You find even quotations from Islam, and I think possibly the Bhagavad Gita. I can't remember, but there are many compilations of quotations about the environment. There are all the relevant to the environment statements of the Baha'i international community, of the Universal House of Justice, many, many resources. You are asking about courses. I've taught courses at the Wilmette Institute since 2011 on sustainable development and climate change. These courses are discontinued, but you can find both of these courses now on the website of the International Environment Forum. And I can put this into the chat. I'll put the, let's see, I put the International Environment Forum website.
I put it in, Christine.
You put it in already? Okay,
Yeah,
excellent.
good.
Then I don't have to do that one.
Yeah.
So let me move to the other one. This is the one on climate change. Okay, let's see. Where's the chat here? Oh, let's see. Sorry, I have some technical issue here. Okay. So that's the course, Scientific and Spiritual Dimensions of Climate Change, an interfaith study course. And there is quite a lot, to study. I don't have the other one right on my fingertips, but I can look for it while you talk. I can look for the, but maybe it's too distracting. When you look for materials for youth, I think Giti has raised the issue, like with children. There are also on the IEF website, there are materials for children and youth, but this here is a special program for junior youth. It's called The Story of Stuff, and you can look into that if you are interested in that. So
That's wonderful. So many resources. So I think
there are many resources, yeah.
yeah. So it sounds like a good launching point is the IEF at least, and then these other ones.
Mm-hmm.
Farna.
And anyone is welcome to become a member of the IEF.
Oh,
The
neat.
IEF is run on the volunteer work, so there are no membership fees. It's just,
Wow.
a bunch of people from around the world who want to make a difference and apply the Baha'i teachings to environmental issues.
That's great. Let's go to Farnas.
Thank you very much for taking my call. I wanted to say this is a superb presentation. I really enjoyed it very much. And thank you for the way you have connected together the teaching of Baha'i faith and the climate change. It is absolutely superb. It's beautiful. I want to thank you. And my question is, first of all, is this being recorded? Is this session being recorded? So if I could get a hold of it again and listen to it, can I or may I? And then to become a volunteer in IEF, is that the name that I could look up on the website? Because I become volunteer of so many organizations and I like to be involved in this one too. And on the other side, I have left you a message on chat. If you could please read it tonight and send your email over to me. I have some other private questions that I need to talk to you about. I would really appreciate it. Thank you, Dr. Miller.
Thank you, Farahnas. And I'm not a doctor.
Oh, you sound like it.
I'm just an ordinary person.
You sound like it. And
yeah, about recording, I think Brett will answer your question. But you had another question, and I'm
had to become a member of IE.
Oh, yeah, right. I just posted the website of the IEF again, because all you need to do is you go there, and then you find, I think, in the right column, a possibility to create an account. So you click on that, and then you just fill out a form. That's basically, you can either just subscribe to the newsletter, or you can become a member, and then you write in more information about yourself, and then that's how you become a member.
Okay, I see it. I see it. I thank you so very much. Thank you. And I need to go to another meeting. I'm going to go, but I hope I hear from you so I can ask you my other question. Thank you so very much.
Thank you, Farahnas.
Nice,
And
Farnas.
look forward to connect with you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Christine, just before we go to the next question, the one link that you put for the course, the Interfaith Study course, it goes to a Google Doc. So I wonder if you could just double check that one.
Oh, why? I see. I can see that. Why did this? Oh, no. This is wrong.
Yeah.
Don't open this. This is really wrong. That's an internal document, and I have no idea how that happened. So I have to
Yeah,
remove
I deleted that for you.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, so please
Oh,
don't go there.
okay, I don't go there because I just transferred it into my email. Okay, all right.
Yeah, right.
Sure.
Let me see.
I mean, I edited it a little bit. No, I'm kidding.
Well, it wouldn't be too bad.
So which one is
Okay.
the right site to go to?
It's not the right. I'm going to post the correct one right here. And there are some let's see, learning, course materials. My goodness. Actually, let me first do, here you have many course materials. So that's the IEF website. Here are many, okay. And here you find all the course materials that
Great.
are on the IEF website. And then this one is the correct link to the course on climate change, the last one. Sorry for that.
Thank you very much. All right, a few more hands. Elizabeth, please.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody. I'm actually in Christine's community, and
Nice.
I've known her for 15 years, so I can attest for her work and dedication and scholarship. She definitely has a honorary PhD. And I truly appreciate all the effort and the thoroughness in your presentation. I'm a scientist, and I've had the opportunity to look at climate change and concerns from both fisheries and seaports. Seaports I just happened to stumble upon, and thought I would just give a little comment because a lot of people are interested in infrastructure and also coastal impacts of climate change. And one of the studies we did at the University of Rhode Island that was published was actually a mathematical model that looked at our ability to raise the 100 most important seaports around the world to keep up with 3 feet of sea level rise. So if you think about seaports as in where the economy and all the goods come to our cities and our countries, the mathematical model proved that if we're using cement and the basic construction materials, we would not be able to keep up. We would not be able to keep up with the ports would become islands, and how to keep the connection between all the transport. So I think this is an important view as far as how it's going to affect the economy and our ability to get goods to the people, and maybe trigger more common sense. But other than that, I think that what we can learn from other cultures, as in the Native American Indians, and how they look 7 generations down of looking after the natural resources, as well as spiritual teachings and the Baha'i teachings, is one way to adapt our own ways and help our communities be more resilient.
Thank you. Thanks
Thank you,
for
Elizabeth. Yeah. I think that the long-term view is really important, like sea level rise. Right now people think, okay, yeah, sea levels have risen. It causes some problems already today. There are houses collapsing, but they are still kind of limited local problems. But it will get much worse. And then with the storm surges, they become significantly stronger, more devastating with higher sea levels. So yeah, so I think very soon, I think humanity will awaken to the threat.
Definitely. Thank you.
Thanks, Elizabeth. Empire, please.
Thank you. I have two small questions, because I always think that to teach people, we need to know the level of their education. So I would like to know, at which level can you consider is humanity on the climate change matter? And also the second question is, uh, yeah, I also think that the big enemy of climate change is economy. So I would like to know why people consider that economy is more important to the world more than climate change.
Mhm. I agree with you. Yeah, that's a very important observation that the economy has become the god of humanity. You know, we worship the money, and politics is ruled by money instead of, you know, like by values and respect um, and what you say about the level of education about climate change, I think that varies. Science has made a lot of progress over the decades since we have known about global warming. So I would say today we know quite a lot about climate change as a humanity, like as we have the science. Of course, there is still a lot more to be learned, and we need to learn more so that we can adapt better, you know. But for the most part, then it depends also, like for the general population, it varies quite a bit. It depends on where you live, where you go to school. There are some schools now, they are really very much on top, and children and youth are very literate in climate change. And then there are many, they are misled. You know, in some countries, you cannot really talk much about climate change, and it's not recognized as being a threat, and people are confused. And and see it as a divisive issue. By the way, but it's just a reality. It's not a divisive issue. It's a reality, and but people are manipulated, and so I think what you say about education, I think it's very important, and that's one of the Baha'i teachings is universal education, and environmental literacy would be very important to be part of education everywhere, you know, from little children to university studies. Thank you for bringing this up, Empire. And I wish you all the best in the DRC.
Thank you. Farouz, please.
Good evening. Thank you very much. I just have a question which is not related to the environment. I'm wondering, Christine, if you have a memory or an experience to share with us when you were teaching BIHE.
What kind of an experience?
I know that the youth and also the people who use the benefits of BIHE they must have been very, very excited about this subject. And the fact that you were sharing your knowledge with them. I have been in some of those classes and I have been very much touched by it, by the sense of appreciation that those youth in Iran have for knowledge and for their professors, whether Baha'is or non-Baha'i. So I'm wondering if you can share something very short in case you can share it with us.
Yeah, I mean, the only thing I can share is that I feel like I have become friends with the students. And there is a real human relationship, you know, there is love for the students, and I think that makes it kind of special.
Thank you.
Christine, I personally have a question. And you kind of touched on it a bit, but I'm curious to know if you have any stats on this. Um, the last statistic I remember was that, I don't know, some 90 something percent of scientists agree that humans are impacting the environment. I think from my understanding, everyone agrees that climate change is happening. The issue is to what extent are humans the reason that it's happening, or that it's accelerating. Um, so I'm wondering if you have any data on that. And it, yeah, you mentioned that there are certain countries where it's too political, you can't talk about it. But do you have a sense of, do the majority of people in the world now sort of acknowledge this is happening and it's a human issue, or is it still very, very split and divisive?
Um, well, let's first talk about the world. Yes, I think now the majority of the people of the world recognize it as an issue, because the majority of the world is really already much impacted. But these are not necessarily the people who are in power and can do that much about it. Regarding the science, there was a study about, I can't remember, but at least 10 years ago that showed that 97% of scientists at that time agreed that climate change is happening and that it is human caused.
Yeah.
Now, there have always been, there are some scientists that have been bought by industry, or who more often, I would say, they are captured by ideology. What cannot be true, what does not fit into their picture, just cannot be true. And these were like the ones that did not so-called believe in climate change. They were not necessarily all climate scientists. They were like a physician specialized in I think in podiatry and things like that, or dentistry, and
Okay. Right,
so
right.
it's not that, yeah, okay, these are scientists, but it is actually now it's very firmly established. Like climate science is firmly established as much as gravity.
Yeah.
Gravity is a law of physics that is firmly established. But of
Right.
course, who knows what we learn later on, and climate science is firmly established, but we always learn new things. So it's a science in progress.
Yeah. Makes
Yeah.
sense. Thanks.
You can even identify the carbon concentrations, like the carbon molecules in the atmosphere, that they come from the fossil fuels with
Oh,
isotopes. So they leave a footprint. So, there are many,
yeah.
it is so obvious and clear
Yeah.
that it is human caused. There is really no more question about it.
Okay, folks, I see one other hand up and one other question, and then maybe we can do a pulse check and see. It's 20 to 9. I also want to be mindful of your time, Christine. So, Faraday, please.
Allah Akbar. It was beautiful subject and beautiful people, all the colorful people, Garden of Allah. And Firuzjon is a shining face, like young, beautiful girls. And I am visited in Texas, my cousin. And this last few days is air conditioned. And Saturday going to be here 85. Now I can see it. If anybody knows Milner Motahede, I met her as youth. She came to Hong Kong. I came to New York. She invited me in United Nations. She has beautiful apartment for dinner. And she said to me, beloved, Abdul Baha said, the weather going to be changed. In Montreal of Canada, going to have palm tree. This Milder Muttahidi said, how Canada is called Firuz John. I don't know how many of you from Canada. What is the Montreal? Going to be palm tree. We don't need to go to scientists. The biggest scientist is the Abdul Baha'u'llah manifestation of God for 500,000 years. They are saying what is going to happen in the world, the situation of the world. But for sure, there is website all about that Baha'i writing about the climate going to change. We know, we can see what is changing. God knows what's going to happen. Adib Taherzadeh said, if I tell you what's going to happen on the earth, nobody can handle it. Through of the Baha'i writing. But love you, just that was I want to say, what happening. Thank you so much. Love everybody. And if you know there is site all about that Abdul Baha'u'llah took it, because Baha'u'llah said life exists on another planet. And Shoghi Afani said in future, the Baha'i will go travel to different universe and give the message of Baha'u'llah to different planet. Now I am ready to go. Firuz, are you ready? Allah Akbar.
Thank you, Faride.
I don't think Brett is ready yet.
I want to go where she's going, man. That's so good. One last question in the chat. I'll just read it. So it says, so we're seeing species in plants, animals going extinct. But do new species come about over time? Or if we stop the extinction process, will new species emerge afterwards? Any thoughts on that, Christine?
Oh, yes. I mean, evolution is continually going on right now, and all the species are slightly changing also, like all the time, everything is in flux in evolution, and there will be other species evolving, definitely. The problem is when we destroy or, when so many plants and animals become extinct, it removes the foundation for human life. Now, let's say humanity is extinguished and no more humans. There are only, and also nature is very much impoverished. Only a few plants and animals left, but they will continue to evolve, So in the long term, it's not a planetary issue. It's an issue for humans, and of course, we feel a kinship for other animals and for plants and animals, and we don't want them to become extinguished, not only because we need them, but they have a right to exist, that they are God's creation too. And so I don't know whether that answers your question, but definitely. And, some with the changes in the environment, some animals and plants, they become extinct. Some are just diminished in number, but then some, they can take advantage. They like the warmer weather, for example.
Right.
And they like it that, for example, their enemy is no more here, so they can multiply. So, but that is not necessarily good news for humans. So rats and mice, for example, have been multiplying tremendously. And, they carry diseases, and that is a problem.
Yeah.
So, yeah, when nature gets out of balance, there are problems in many directions.
Thank you. Friends, I think with your permission, we'll end it there and have Getty say one more thing, and then we're gonna.
Yeah, very quick question. Christine, we were told that some of the companies that they make plastic, these plastics are biodegradable. Is this true?
Yes, there are biodegradable plastics. That is correct. But it's not, I would not recommend that you would, for example, change your regular
Yeah,
dishes to
absolutely.
biodegradable plastic because they come at a tremendous cost to the environment as well. It uses, they use a lot of electricity to manufacture, you know, and where does the electricity come from? You know, does it further contribute with like coal-fired power plants or, yeah. So, but there are biodegradable plastics, yes. And by the way,
Thank you.
some of them you can even compost, but only commercially compost. But composting is one of the things we can all do, you know, put all our kitchen waste into compost pile. That's one of the easy things we can do.
Can do. Thank you.
Christine, thank you so much. Thanks for sharing your wisdom, your experience, your passion, and for helping to share this through the lens of the spiritual, the spiritual qualities and principles. It's just exciting, and like I said, it's a bit daunting, but I love that there's always an element of hope and a reminder of our sense of purpose in terms of what we're actually trying to do here. So thank you once again, and I'll just stop recording here.